Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us to this great workshop. It's my first one with my new company, so I'm super excited that all of you are here to support me today. Bright Side Success is something that I wanted to start for years and years, and now I get to, and I'm happy to share my time and my learnings with you. Today, we're going to talk about leading through uncertainty. I think on some of the topics, I feel like I know a little bit of things. When it comes to this, I know a lot of things. So leading through uncertainty is something that I think I live every day of my life, and I want to share some of my things that I've learned with you. Here we go. Change is constant. I actually like change. If you want my honest opinion, I think change is fun. But uncertainty is a little bit different, and it can build or break trust. So I want to make sure that we can keep that trust with our folks and keep the trust with our friends and team and make everything moving successfully. So today's agenda, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through some 5 tips, and then we're going to go through 1 use case. And then at the end, after the class, you're going to get a playbook. And take a look at your worksheet. That's to follow along with what we're going to talk about today. It has all the tips, and then it has that use case at the end. That's for you to use, to follow along with, and to learn with us. So today's goal is so that you learn. And at the end, I'm going to ask you for your learnings. I'm going to ask you for some questions as we go through the workshop. But I'm excited that you're here today. Okay, well, before we get too far, I do have one of my really good friends here today, Steve Novak. And Steve worked with me when I was at Nightcore Gas. So we've had a gap of about, what, Steve, 14 years of where we worked together. And Steve, when he was at Nightcore Gas, was one of my favorite leaders that I got to collaborate with. And so I'm happy to say that he's here today to help us talk about some of these topics of uncertainty. Steve works for Dell and really has an enterprise view of everything and lots of ideas and lots of thoughts on all types of things from leadership to technology. And technology is where my start is and everything that I do and everything I think about. Steve also works with getting AI going through data centers and all of that. So he's a little busy these days with all of the AI initiatives going on. I think one of the best things though about Steve is I get great energy from him, and that's you can't make that up. Like that's really good friendship over the years. Steve, welcome to the workshop.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Denise. Denise reached out to me approximately 2.5 weeks ago and just to reconnect, and I had no idea about Brightside Success. And when she said, "Hey, I'd like you to be a speaker," after probably 30 minutes during a lunch, I was like, absolutely. I ran to the opportunity. About myself, and Denise kind of gave the background at Dell Technologies. I manage a team of 20 individuals across the central United States. I support approximately 4,000 of Dell's largest customers in that central United States territory patch. And these are sales stats, right? More importantly, from a leadership perspective, in leading approximately 20 people, I have actively right now 4 mentors that I engage with on a quarterly basis. I've brought into the organization 10 individuals across my career as a leader for the past 7 years. And then I also have, additional conversations with, inbound resources or individuals that want to join Dell or have interest in joining Dell. So I take these sorts of conversations and these ideas about leadership enablement and leadership training pretty seriously, because I think they're critical foundations for how you can grow yourself. And the quote here from my mother about, always investing in yourself from an education perspective is something that I take to heart.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for taking the time and helping us all learn.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's get started. First, let's define uncertainty. I think I alluded to it earlier, but uncertainty could mean change, could mean something's happening, a change in conditions, something's unpredictable. But I put a little cloud on this slide to kind of say that when I'm talking about uncertainty, it really has a negative connotation, maybe something that isn't super positive or isn't going the way you thought it would go. And when it comes to uncertainty, leaders really have to lean in, because this is where, as leaders, we have to be strong, we have to be tight with our messages, And quite honestly, we're probably going through that uncertainty as well. So we've got, what's going on with my home and my family and all the things, along with a team that we're bringing along with us. So it's rapid change, rapid thoughts, and rapid things that you have to be ready for. So what I want you all to think about is think about the last major change you led, you were a part of, and what was the hardest for you? And I know for me, I worked through the transition of our company from US Cellular over to T-Mobile, and that was hard. It was a good 2-year transition. I wouldn't say that was easy. I learned so much during that time, and I'm so glad that I got to be a part of it with such a wonderful team. But for me, that's what's anchoring me to keep moving, learning, and growing. That's uncertainty. Steve, anything you want to add on uncertainty?
No, I think the idea and concept that I consider and think about from a Dell point of view and what I've had from my own personal experience is when you have uncertainty, it's important to center on creating certainty and leading into the opportunities of where you want to have the structure for creating that certainty. And one of the focus areas that I identify is the time scale. What is the time frame for potential uncertainty or challenge or change? Is it the next for us quarterly basis? Is it a half? Is it a year? So some of these time scale functions are really important to centering the team and centering the resources and the individuals that are looking to you as a leader to land on how you can, gain the buy-in for said change. And at Dell, one of the key attributes or ideas that we had from a change just recently is something we call modern Dell. And this is really the adoption of artificial intelligence technologies, AI tools, to our business processes, to our workload, to what we do on a day-to-day basis. And we had measurements and metrics and tools and processes and things like that. But that transformation really, focused on ways that I was able to communicate to my team proactively and identify the time scale, to identify how long they would be looking to expect about these new tools, looking to expect about what the change might be from a futures perspective, and more importantly, what that could mean as a go forward, how you would have to adapt or change or update what you do. Because of that continuing evolution of time investment in yourself, you want to focus on ways that you can enhance that capabilities, because we'll always have new tools and processes and things like that.
Yeah, and that's a great use case, Steve. And I think we're going to delve into that a little bit more in great detail with AI. That's a great one to think about. So everybody has something that they're thinking about when it comes to uncertainty. It might be finding a job. You might be in the middle of an interview and you're not sure if you're going to get the job. There's just all these uncertainties. Everybody, I want you to think about what your uncertainty is. And then we're going to now get into the tips. So we have 5 tips for you. Now, these are things that are important to me and things that I have done that are proven for me and my teams. And so I want to share them with you. And one of the first ones is creating uncertainty or creating certainty, in the middle of uncertainty. Steve mentioned it, when there isn't certainty, you have to create it. It might be a little bit artificial. It might be a little bit like, hey, wait, is this really certainty? But sometimes it's as simple as creating a meeting. And that meeting, when I had uncertainty, I created a meeting every other week. I said, hey guys, we're going to get together. We're going to have a town hall. I know everybody loves meetings. I know everybody loves town halls, but it created that certainty that we're going to meet. Regardless if there's anything to say, we're going to meet every other week and we're going to talk about things. It was just a basic consistency that created certainty. And in those meetings, we would talk about what we can control, what we can't control. I think the hardest days during some of those meetings were what I have nothing to say. So at those times, I tell a personal story, me going through the uncertainty, me living through something that's difficult as well. Because if I was feeling it, they were feeling it, and we would go from there. So Steve, how about you?
Yeah, and that time scale function about creating certainty was critical. And if you think about the times that you've had uncertainty or you wanted to create the certainty, reoccurrence or focusing on ways that across that duration that you set from an expectations perspective with your team or your additional leaders that report to you, is more than just important. It is critical. Consistency and reoccurrence of those interactions that you have, because those are items that you can control. Those are items that you can structure as a leader to make sure that you're front and center and you're still having open and conversations that are going to yield uncertainty elements and are going to bubble up new and emerging questions that your team has or your leaders have, because what you don't know is in the first time that the individuals that you're engaging with that report to you or are leaders that report to you, they're just digesting or just understanding the change for the first time. They're just understanding this uncertainty for the first time. It's going to take time for them to internalize it, realize additional questions, and then come forward with those additional questions, because you don't know what you don't know when it happens. And then you start to see some of those additional changes in practice, or you start to understand and think about them in additional conversations and context outside of that first conversation that you've had with your leader or team members. And that reoccurrence is an important critical factor that I focus on when you can do something to control it, because it's always going to change down the road.
For sure, for sure. And that consistency, I think you said something here that I really liked, was consistency, but also leaders have a couple minutes, sometimes a couple hours, maybe days. They know information ahead of time. And sometimes that knowing something ahead of time lets you prepare just a little bit more than maybe the individual that you're talking to. Of course it does. And so they've got to process it. Everybody processes differently. Some people are like right away. It depends on the topic. Others need time to get to that. So something you said there just really hit me, Steve. So appreciate that. Okay, well, let's move on to tip number 2. So now, you've got everybody in this consistent flow, you're talking about things, but really the thing everybody wants to know is why. Something happened, something is happening at work, you're changing a process, now they have to do 10 steps instead of 5. But why? What is the anchor for that? Is it that now there's a new compliance requirement? Okay, and as a company, we have to follow this compliance. Is it because now we have to watch finances differently? Want to make sure that we keep folks ready and anchored to making sure we're sticking to a budget? That clarity of the why helps people understand. And if people understand why, they will get behind you. They will understand. And then it will also create that certainty that you need. Steve, how about you?
Yeah, and so when we thought about creating the time scale of how do you justify or rationalize how long this change might be happening, and you drill into explaining the why, my focus and my tip is really to focus and create the parallel, relate it and downstream it to what their job is going to potentially evolve from and to. What are they going to do yesterday versus today? Drill into the who, what, where, and how of what's happening. And that creates then the ecosystem of understanding. Because when you think about the why, you have your own perspective and point of view of the why. And taking a personal story or a personal aside about what you've internalized it as creates a greater deal of understanding and rationalizes it even further. So you get that future buy-in. Because as these changes happen in your organization or in your own personal life, how you understand what's happening is really how you are able to adopt, and continue to go forward. For me, we just rolled out a new entire business unit called Revenue Ops. Rev Ops is what it's shorthand for. And this is rolling up to Michael Dell, the executive leadership team, and this new RevOps team is going to do something significantly different that hadn't existed previously in Dell. And what that meant for my team, that as I communicated this out, was really more about what did it mean to them? What changed for them? How did it change for them? Explaining the whys of what it impacts in their own day-to-day life. As large of a company as Dell has 100,000 employees, creates a greater deal of understanding and potentially acceleration for adoption, really, because that change is going to be just that change, something new, something different. And it focuses on ways that they can benefit from that change as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thinking about how to connect it to their position and the company, their goals, all those things that they're working on, priorities day in and day out, really helps folks understand things. Sometimes when you're too high of a leader and not a line leader, you forget those details of the levels. So yeah, Steve, I really appreciate that. Okay, we're moving on to 3, build safety. This one is near and dear to my heart because I'm in meetings and I hear things like, okay, this might be a stupid question, or wait, I don't want to ask a stupid question. Well, I think there's no such thing as a stupid question. If you're thinking about it, it could be a question that everybody else has on their mind as well. So building safety is critical to me. And as a leader, you have to say, okay, wait, there's no stupid questions. It's okay. Now, not everybody might like the question. They may have heard the question 3 times. That maybe it's just annoying to some people, but you have to let your team ask you questions at their pace, and you have to build that safety for that. Now, the only way to truly do this is to listen. You can't just take the ideas and not take them in and try to understand them. But your job as a leader is to build that safety and protect people. Now, as a leader, there's other things that you have to do. Say somebody's coming at you at a meeting and it's getting contentious. As a leader, you have to build that safety for your team. I used to say I would stand in front of my team and protect them as best I could if something was getting difficult. My job as a leader is to make sure that you have that safety to give your opinion and not get railroaded or not get yelled at a meeting. And that's why I hold this one dear to me, that building safety has to happen in a team.
So, yeah, thank you. When you think about building safety, you think about ways that you can down level it, if you would. I feel that the best opportunity that you have is to position yourselves in their shoes, to focus on ways that you are going to identify that this change or this uncertainty element that's coming is affecting you as well. That transparency, that level of insight, that personalization creates a opportunity for additional buy-in, additional conversations as well, additional realization of we're in it together. A tone element of the conversation is critical. I focus on in all of my communications, all of my emails, all of my internal updates to additional leaders to use the words of we, us, together, all in, things of that nature, because those are critical functions to identify and create that team culture. But more importantly, that tone that you take with that change and building safety, when you identify those key terms like we, us, together, and not an I or me or those sorts of functions, it doesn't create an accusatory based situation. Also, the other concept that I think Denise mentioned as well is there are going to be individuals who are potentially very upset or challenging you as the leader who are delivering said messaging, or feel like they have some level of now new distrust about this change, and you're going to be the effective target. Positive attitudes and a tone element to level above that or accelerate above that are extremely important and should be anticipated and thought about ahead of time. I think across our team members and leaders that we work with, we understand and know personalities and types and scenarios where we're going to see those challengers or those objection holders, and can anticipate that potentially ahead of time. Sometimes you have hours and days and so on and so forth to plan for that communication. Sometimes you have minutes to plan for that communication. But knowing your team and having understanding of your team is critically important, because you can address then in additional subsequent meetings with those individuals that do elevate a level of distrust or challenge to that uncertainty, to that change. And frankly, you don't want to create a scenario where you are isolating those individuals or creating issues where they are going to feel like they are called out by the fact that they spoke up. So creating that safety net to accept, understand, and realize and consume in almost a level of empathy the questions and concerns and even potential anger that might be emerging is an important factor to consider here when you think about building safety as a key tip.
Yeah, there's a lot to do as a leader. You're exhausting me already. My goodness, you have to care about everybody and listen to everybody. But you do. You have to care about all those things. Yeah. Okay, moving on to number 4, decide. Now this one, during uncertainty, maybe you can't decide. Maybe there's no decisions to really make. But this is where you have to make some decisions. Maybe it's prioritizing. What I found worked for us is we always talked about top three priorities. And so everybody knew the top three priorities, whether you liked it or not, you knew it. Whether it applied to you or not, that's where we had to get into a little bit of detail. Sometimes when you talk at the corporate level, priorities and decisions don't always make sense to each individual. So then you have to drill down as a leader and help people decide. Making decisions is not an easy thing to do, but it does help with certainty. Steve, I'll hand it to you.
Absolutely. And I think all of us from a leader's perspective, we have these periodic, we'll call it HR-driven priority type conversations, goal setting at the beginning of a year, priorities for individuals for growth, organizational mission statements, and these sorts of concepts and theories and things like that. This, when you have uncertainty and you have unchange, becomes a backstop, becomes a conversation, growth or decision tree of sorts that you would want to engage with your teams. I think about it in the terms of guardrails. And the idea and concept of guardrails is you're going to have throughout this level of uncertainty, back to the time scale, it could be 6 months, it could be 2 years, it could be some longer duration, is realizing what those global priorities, those national priorities, those priorities for the organization that were set 6 months ago, 6 weeks ago, or whatever those might be, and hearkening back to those to focus that change that's happening and saying the knowing your brief, knowing your customer, knowing your business are my three that I focus on with my team, right? Those translate to different things. That's where, when we have levels of uncertainty, when we have a modern Dell and AI use of tools, when we have, adoption for a new business unit that's going to do something dramatically new with our organization, becomes then the function so that if those guardrails are on the sides of the road, I can then support a future change and a future what if and a future decision and change that might have to happen that isn't even visible or known yet. Because as this continues to evolve, as the uncertainty continues to grow effectively, you're making decisions on common basis, on common functions that the team should be well familiar with, and then should be able to exercise in their own individual decision structure, in their own groups, in their own subsets, virtual teams or otherwise. So deciding what you're doing is a key tip, and then focusing on ways that you can structure that. Guardrails, rules of the road, however you want to define it, are really important around prioritization.
Yeah, I like rules of the road. That's what I usually say with my team, but I think guardrails are helpful too. It just helps you make sure that you can define what you're working on day in and day out. And they could shift every day. Things could change every day. So this is nice to have a North Star for everybody to follow. Okay, now here's our final tip. Tip number 5, communicate. Okay, well, we probably talked about, the 4 things were all about communication, but I like to think of this one as like a wash, rinse, repeat. You communicate and then you communicate again, and guess what? You communicate again. Somebody very smart once told me communicate 7 times, 7 ways. Well, that's a lot of times to communicate. That can be exhausting if you're a leader, but guess what? You have to do it. You have to do it to, have one-on-ones. You have to have meetings that are consistent with your town halls, that are consistent with your leadership, and you have to keep doing communication. It could be a video call like this. It could be an email. Sometimes it has to be multiple ways because people take in and learn and take in information way differently. And that's okay. We're all humans. We're all different. That's what makes us exciting. So think about that when you're communicating. Steve, how about you?
Yeah, and so my modus is to focus on 3 primary communication methodologies. Is I do a Teams message for instant, on the fly, just stream of information-based communications on small changes and big changes, on minor updates that happen in the middle of a day to major things. I backstop that then with these major changes to be email follow-up. Not necessarily, and this is very specific, not even referencing that I already told you this in Teams or in Slack or your chat tool. It's important to do that, not referencing back to something that's already been communicated when you do communicate multiple times, because you create additional work potentially by your team or by the resources that are consuming said messaging. Because they're like, wait a minute, what did I miss? Where did I miss it? And then they have to go hunt and find. Or then they feel like you're being redundant. Why are you being redundant, right? And then I usually almost always follow it up with a reinforcement during my staff calls and my staff conversations. And this is frankly just learned practice from being a sales leader and communicating with customers. I tell my team all the time from a sales engagement when you go to meet with customers, even if you've told this customer, talked about this product, positioned this capability, this feature, this set, this whatever it might be, last month, last year, they forgot. It's easy for individuals to have moved on to something else and already missed the meat and potatoes of said messaging or the reasons and why. So that reoccurrence of communication not just reinforces the messaging, not just makes it available for individuals that may not learn or listen or hear in one specific way, but you create that opportunity to make sure that the messaging is consistent and that you're hitting those guardrails so that you're focusing on what's the time scale. So you're identifying and creating certainty and building safety throughout that entire process. And so these tips, right, are really, really, repeatable and interchangeable in a lot of respects and aspects. And as Denise said, we talked about communication through each one of the previous 4 tips, and now we've here gotten to the 5th tip, and it's focusing on communications. It's not an understood thing that you have to plan for it.
Yeah, I think Steve, it seems redundant, but that's actually the point of this, is you need to be redundant. I like one thing you said though, with making sure you don't kind of scatter too much information all over the place, then folks can't find it. I know as I'm building my business with Brightside Success, when I work with my clients, I will make sure that I create like a link where they can find one place for everything, because I can't even find the things that I need to find. Like, where's this document? Where's that document? Where's this communication? Where's that? So I just create a link and we all kind of navigate to that one link, and it just keeps consistent communication. Okay, well, we got through the 5 tips. We did it, Steve. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Now we have a use case. Okay, so let me describe what a use case is. For those of you following along in your worksheet, there's a little note area for you to keep track of this. When we go through a use case, we're going to go through those 5 tips and talk about how to think about it. But let me just explain to you what a use case is. A use case to me is a situation that we're going to go through. I like to think about a problem statement. I come from the ITIL certification days and all that. And you always start with your problem statement and then how are you going to solve it? Well, when things are uncertain, it's not that simple to be like, here's one problem statement and here's one solution. We're going to have 5 solutions here for this problem statement. And so our use case is, AI technology is here. We're all using it. I mean, I can't send an email without running it through ChatGPT these days and having it enhance it in some way. Okay, I should admit, sometimes it writes the whole email for me. But, I want to make sure that I'm using AI. I'm thinking about AI. I quite frankly think it's fun. Now, there's some ins and outs of AI. There's some good, there's some bad. Now, one of the bad things in our problem statement is, could AI take your job? You're working day in and day out, you're administrator of a system. Could we just automate it? And then through AI, you don't have a job. So we want to talk about that situation because it's going to hit all of us in some way. Do you need to do what you're doing each and every day, or could somebody do it for you? Even some of the social media, you can download an app and it can build a post for you. I mean, now I prefer working with Katie, my social media person, but everybody could just generate it on the fly if they wanted to through AI. So everybody's job is at risk when it comes to this, and we've got to prepare ourselves. So Steve, I'm going to hand it to you just to get started with your thoughts on it, and then we can start going through how we would solve this problem.
Absolutely. And this is something I talk to large audiences and large groups a lot as part of my role at Dell, is about artificial intelligence adoption and workloads for AI and how a business might utilize AI as a productivity enhancer, as a revenue generator, as a customer retainer, as a variety of different use cases and scenarios and examples. But the one that I really like to kind of harken back to is actually within my kids. I've got three boys. My oldest is a junior in high school right now. And the idea and concept of, hey, AI is going to not just take your job, it's going to take the teacher's job. And so the teachers are actually looking and focusing on this concept of embracing artificial intelligence as part of their curriculum. So everyone's had to do, and remembers back in the day when you had to read the book. You had to read Of Mice and Men, 1984, whatever the book was in high school. So my son's assignments now aren't to go read the book and come back and write a term paper on said book and novel. It's a abstracted article, part of the book or otherwise, that they read actively in class. And then they ask questions, literary concept questions about tone or the protagonist or whatever it might be from an ELA perspective. And then their homework is to go ask the same questions to Gemini because they're a Google Classroom function, and then utilize prompt engineering to get a more real answer to align that to the coursework that they did while in class, to focus on ways that what did they learn in class, and then what are they learning that's more while they're outside of the classroom in these AI tools. And as I've given some of these speeches and conversations in front of large groups, I talk about a calculator, right? We all had to learn how to do arithmetic, multiplication, long division, things like that. But how many times do you really truly sit down and do that? You pull out the calculator, or now the calculator on the phone. And so when I was in school, calculators were still part of the curriculum and it was an enhancement function. So when we think about creating uncertainty or creating certainty within uncertainty, utilizing these sorts of stories and examples creates levels of uncertainty and sees the clear pathway of, it doesn't remove the role, the job, the otherwise. What it does is it creates the opportunity, right? And the time scale. What is that time scale for certainty, and how do you manage through that or support your teams through that? The time scale is infinite right now. The consumption of artificial intelligence for productivity enhancement, if you're not signing up yourself personally for utilization of these tools, embracing these tools, and becoming proficient just like you are in Excel and Word and things like that, you're going to have the opportunity to lose your job. That's where you're going to be at the left behind stage. And I think a lot of us from a career, personal perspective realize these sorts of scenarios and examples. But if you think about that in terms of leading and creating certainty, how do you describe the why? How do you describe what is the realization for the organization, for the individual or individuals when you're thinking about the AI is going to come in to do a business process? A insurance organization that I work with and spoke to, they are looking at ways. Hail damage is pretty common in the Chicago Midwest area. And there is insurance adjusters that come out to people's houses and walk on the roof and find the dents and the stuff like that and the shingles from the hail. This organization is going to create a fleet of drones that will go and shoot the roof with a camera and come back and give the adjustment in that regard in that way. They're not removing the adjuster, they're not removing the person in the field, but they are enhancing their business process and accelerating the outcomes for customers because they create lower the safety impact, right? They don't have to have someone climbing on a roof and slippery falling off and things like that. It lower insurance costs because now you don't have to have adjusters that used to have auto insurance, right? Because they have to drive around. And you create new levels of outcome and new levels of value. And so explaining that why to those resources, to that individual, creates new transformative ways that they can consume it and realize it. But I'm going too far on this example to go into too many of the bullet points. But if you, Denise, if you want to kind of hit on maybe safety and deciding for how AI might take your job.
Yeah, no, you were like, you learned all the tips already, Steve. You were just ready to go. You got them all going. But yeah, I like the story of the drones because now like when you said that story, I imagined like 50 drones like flying over my house and I didn't expect they were coming over there that day. And suddenly they're falling down on my house just like hail. But that's what I thought of when you told that story. So it created a little, uncertainty for me. But when I think about safety and some of those other aspects of what we just learned, I think about well, okay, there's some tools out there. I can go play with them. There's tools I can use that we all have available to us, like ChatGPT and Copilot and Gemini, like you mentioned. But have we really had training on AI? Have we really looked at, the language models that are behind the scenes? And for those of you who are technologists, how are we testing AI? Because I don't know about you, but when I ask it a question, sometimes it's right, and sometimes I have to like yell at it and go, no, this is not right. I don't know why you gave me this answer. And it will come back and say, oh, I'm so sorry. You are right. It was the wrong answer. Okay. So, I challenge all of you to get some training in AI and see what's under the covers, what's going on underneath there. And make sure that we understand what AI truly is doing day in and day out. There's classes on LinkedIn, there's classes, free classes everywhere you can take on AI. Now, for me, I've not taken a training class yet. I want to desperately. I try to just play with it whenever I can. So for me, can't watch a TV show without playing with ChatGPT. Can't ask a question to my husband as we're sitting in the car. Please tell us the history of this and what happened here and there. But creating this with AI, so training gives me the safety that I think I need to understand it a little bit better. I think I have concerns, another area of safety, I have concerns where programmers could start writing code and just do ChatGPT and say, write the code. Sounds like a great idea, but what if it's wrong? How are they checking it? How are they testing it? So just a couple examples to show you that there's a lot of work to be done with AI that can create the safety and understanding, so educate yourself and learn a little bit more about it so that you can test it, check it out, and make sure it's right. Because I gotta tell you, sometimes I talk to ChatGPT like it's a person and I get mad at it. So I don't know about you, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And these concepts of how we're personally utilizing AI as a tool in almost a consumer level are very, very real. And you think about deciding as a tip for communicating to team members and this use case of can AI take your job and so on and so forth. Inside of artificial intelligence, there's a term that's literally called guardrails. And that is a key construct for AI safety and for AI policy and for AI realization of value and things like that. Without drilling too much into the technology that enables it from a tooling perspective and point of view, the construct of how do you sustain artificial intelligence as a tool for productivity and a tool across an organization and dispel this concept that AI is going to take your job, it comes back to those fundamentals of how you are building your team and structuring your prioritization and making sure that they see the value proposition for some of their key priorities. If you had know your message, know your business, know your products as a kind of 1, 2, 3 priorities across your focus stack, if you would. Artificial intelligence only operates to accelerate all of those, only operates to enable all of those, only operates to make your job easier and your life easier. And those that are doing those sorts of tasks, right, from a Dell Technologies perspective, we're measuring productivity based on use of these tools. We're trying to understand as an ROI function, if they spend $100 on a Teams premium license from a Microsoft tooling perspective, does that tool create better follow-ups from meetings? Does that create meetings that are occurring that are more valuable to the attendees? Does it create less meetings? Because at the end of the day, who loves to join a meeting and talk about something that was sent in an email yesterday or a week ago or something like that and just talk about the words that were in the email, right? Those are functions of repetitiveness and functions of how can you, ensure that you're not going to be in a concept of continuing to get the same information and the same details that you would have just by reading an email. And so deciding what you do as a tip is critically important, and building function or a focus for your team and reinforcing that focus is super important here. So
Yeah, I think you can tie the deciding to make it a priority along with the creating certainty, you could do something with your team where you're like, hey, I want you all to do some training and maybe sandbox playing with AI for 2 hours a week. Like, I expect you to do that each week. Now, this is if people are not doing anything at all and you want to give them, hey, put this on the list. It's okay to do it. Sometimes our workload is so crazy, we don't even have time to take the 2 hours to do that. Put it on your calendar, make it a meeting, make it certain for your team, make it okay and safe for them to do. I think every minute you invest in AI, like you said, Steve, is only going to give you more time to do other great things. You know, how can you take this and get more customers, add more value, you know, produce more each and every day? And I think AI is going to get us there.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I guess I want to make sure of is that identification of additional homework, additional follow-up around artificial intelligence as a tool. I commonly have conversations with family members and extended family members and friends and things like that to say, how do I learn about AI? How do I get smart about AI? How do I get more proficient? And we've identified just trying it, doing it, using it as a key construct and concept as well. The learnings that you can have through YouTube and LinkedIn videos and LinkedIn training. Khan Academy has free classes and things like that. There's a wealth of opportunities out there. But there's also, you know, long form podcasts that are out there in the ecosphere as well that are extremely interesting and extremely informative in terms of understanding and getting smart on not just the capabilities that artificial intelligence and AI tools like ChatGPT and Copilot and Gemini bring to the table, but then create realizations or opportunities for what ifs and scenarios. So I'll give a personal example that kind of drills into it's not work centric, but we're going to be going on a family trip to Europe with my family next year. And so it is an extremely time expensive task to go figure out, you know, where do you land? What sites are you going to see? What hotels are you going to get to? Europe, not all the hotels have air conditioning. So that's a big deal, right? So you want to make sure we have some of these, we'll call it American-based luxuries, if you would. And so I'm using AI-based tools to do a majority of this research and a majority of this investigation, along with crowdsourcing feedback from people that have been to the specific countries that we're going to from a family perspective, right? And one of the key fun things that I told Denise actually as a story is, you know, we started thinking about, hey, I asked the question, give me a list of hotels that have air conditioning that are available during this point in time. And it's a pretty common task to ask AI to execute that sort of query request, and it goes and crawls websites and things like that. But then the follow-on requests all of a sudden redirected me to hostels in Europe that were like shared bathroom situations and definitely like backpacking through Europe, like I'm a, you know, just graduated from college type of thing, not with a family of 3 boys. And it was funny, but at the same point, not funny because, you know, this safety aspect and what you're doing with AI can get completely off the rails really, really fast, where it's going to give you all these recommendations and potentially execute bookings for hostels. Now, that's not what I want to be doing at all, of course, but you as a carbon plus silicon type of outcome gives you the opportunity to kind of realize these, you know, the use of the tool. And funny enough, I've told that story during dinners and things like that as well. But it's a good opportunity to get yourself and exercise those muscles so that you all are proficient and all are capable in utilizing these tools.
Yeah, yeah. And I was thinking of safety the whole time you were telling that story. I'm like, oh my God, what if he ends up someplace he doesn't want to be? You know, that's
Yeah.
where you have to maybe talk to a friend as well, run the, you know, maybe you don't AI test it. Maybe you test it with a real person who's been to Italy.
Yeah.
And you go, does this make sense? Is this, you know, is this real? Because you're right, it could cause some trouble. Or you spend all your time over here and you missed over there. And it just
Yeah.
goes based on crowdsourcing, like you said. So. Yeah, that's a good example. But yeah, so I think we have hit this, Steve. Like there's a lot of things with AI. I encourage all of you to learn and grow with it and make sure that it doesn't take your job. You know, take control of your life, take control of your job and learn ahead of it and use it. Use it to your benefit. And then you won't be left behind. Okay, well, I'm going to move on. This is our bright takeaways. We talked about a lot of these things today. These are things mostly tied to our use case, which we went through, kind of the answers, if you will, from that. But being transparent and telling your stories, creating a timeline for learning, being careful when AI is wrong, all the things we talked about. So, you know, every time we work on something, this is the playbook that I use when I'm meeting with my team. So there's a new question out there, there's a new problem. I write down the problem statement and I figure out some solutions based on these 5 tips. I come from a technical background, so you always have a problem statement and you want to get to the root cause. These are the ways to get to that root cause. These are the ways to make sure you solve your team's communication, you solve the uncertainty, and you keep things moving along. So hopefully these takeaways were useful for you today and you were able to follow along in the worksheet, but I'm going to keep on moving like we do. Okay, so as many of you know, I have started a company. My company is Brightside Success. And as part of this, I do have services that are available. So here today, I would like to share with you some of my services. And one of them is a strategy session. This strategy session, I have a coupon for you, so pay attention to the coupon code. And I have a special offer for you today. But a strategy session is something where we go through what are your goals? We talked about goals today. I can help you decide. I can help you come up with actionable steps and then come up with a 90-day planner for you. Now this today is $5.95 for that session. It's something that I've done many times with many clients, and I'm super excited to offer a 10% discount for you today. Now, if you happen to sign up for this before midnight, I have a whole package for you as well. I have a free marketing book that one of my really good friends, Heidi Hattendorf, just produced. It's about marketing growth. And so I've been using that. You can use it for branding. You can use it for anything you do day in and day out. And then I have a Brave book bundle that you'll receive. So take a look, please sign up, and I hope you will use my services for Brightside Success. Okay, one more thing to tell you about. So we do have some upcoming events. Now, Steve was gracious enough. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate all that you did today to share your stories. I could talk to you all day. Maybe, you know, we'll talk again, hopefully after this and keep in touch and it won't be 14 years. But, you know, I do have some other things coming up, like why do you need a coach? You know, what's the bright side and dark side of AI? This is where we're going to delve a little bit more into that dark side and how to overcome it. And then I have some calls on how to listen to an earnings call, how to talk to a shareholder, and how to negotiate, you know, how to get what you want. Okay, so I want to thank some amazing people that have helped me out today. So we've got Julia Shannon, who was my admin from my last company, and she's graciously helped me today through this process. You have been amazing, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.